Guys, I'm going to go through all the parts you're going to need and tools that you're going to need to install a push handle to the forward frame of the Ram Promaster slider. So what I will provide at a minimum is these two plastic blocks and these three items here, which are centering plugs, and I'll go over what those are used for in a bit. So what you see in the frame right now is the only items that I will 3D print and provide. It includes two mounting blocks that adapt the grab handle and allow you to mount the grab handle to the forward frame of the slider door. So these two mounting blocks differ only by the orientation of this recess, and I'll let you know how these need to be oriented when you actually assemble the handle and install it. The other items that I provide are to deal with the fact that when you install this to the frame, you need to install sheet metal screws. And typically an item like a punch is used to create a small pit or dent in the metal that you can use to precisely locate a drill bit and drill the hole very precisely. Okay, to mark the holes, if you have a punch, this will be the best case scenario, because we want to mark these holes, and when we drill them, we don't want them to be off center. And if you don't have a little divot or pit in the metal, when you drill, that drill bit can kind of walk around and your holes won't be placed as good as possible. And I realize that not everybody's going to have the proper size punch to do that. So I'm designed these little, I'm calling them centering plugs, that will allow you to use household items like drill bits or nails to create the small pit or divot. And the way these will work, and I'll go through it more in the installation instructions, if you insert one of those plugs into the hole, and then as you're holding it up in place on the slider, you can insert either a nail or a drill bit, and you want the biggest size drill bit that will just go in the hole but lets you slide it up and down. And then when this is in place, you can twist the drill bit, or you could tap on it to mark the center location of the hole very precisely. So you could possibly use a nail that you have around as well. So that gets around having to have a punch that not everybody will have. So in summary, the items that I'll provide are at least 3 of these centering plugs and 2 blocks. The rest of the stuff I'm kind of showing in an exploded view. You're going to need some hardware to install the handle to the blocks. And for those, I'm using 1-inch long, 1/4-20 thread bolts or screws. So these, I'll go through how those are used later. So you use 2 of those bolts and a hex nut. The back side of these blocks have a recess that accepts a hex nut, and you need 2 of those. And I use ones, and suggest using ones with a nylon insert. So you need 2 1-inch 1/4-20 bolts and nuts to attach the handles to the blocks. Then we're going to use a total of 10 sheet metal screws to attach these blocks to the door frame. So once you have your holes drilled, you will use sheet metal screws. We will use these sheet metal screws to install the blocks to the door frame. So some of the other items that you're going to need, you're going to want to have a sharpened pencil. When we decide where we want to place the handle, we're going to trace the top edge so that we can have it as a reference. You're going to want a screwdriver depending on what you're using, what style fasteners you're going to use. I'm using all Phillips head, so I got a Phillips screwdriver for that. You're going to need a 1/16 inch bit and then a drill bit that's the proper size for the screw that you're using. So I use a 1/16 inch bit to drill the pilot hole, and then I use the other bit to drill the hole that's appropriately sized for the screw. So that's an overview of the parts that you'll need with the description of what I provide. The handle is something that I ordered off of Amazon, and I'll provide the exact part number for this handle in the description. In this first step, we're going to attach the handle to these plastic blocks. I kind of have the parts arranged in sort of an exploded view to show how they'll be assembled. So there's two plastic blocks. They differ slightly by the orientation of this recess. They each have a recess, but they point in different directions. When you assemble the handle, when you put the handle on, you want these recesses be pointing toward each other, where I call this the tip, where this has a more narrow side than here. Those narrower sides should be pointing toward each other. And the reason for that, this handle has a hard plastic lip on it that sits slightly above the surrounding rubber. And I was just wanted to take advantage of that to, when I position this block there, if I have that aligned into that recess, it sort of holds it in place a little bit. And I think it's a little more secure. So to install the blocks, it's a breeze. So you'll just drop a nut on the back side. I have a hex recess for a hex nut, and I am going to use these hex nuts with a nylon insert, and you just drop one of those nuts down in there, and I just keep my finger there so it doesn't fall out. You're going to drop a bolt through the hole in the handle, and when you put this on, make sure that this flap is moved out of the way, not underneath it. So once you have it like that, just going to pick up the block, keep my finger on the nut, and then align it like that. Turn it this way, let gravity kind of hold the screw in place or the bolt, and then just come in and tighten it up with the screwdriver. So I used just a screw head, a bolt with a Phillips head, but you might choose to do something else. The important thing is the length of the bolt should not be more than 1 inch so that it doesn't extend past the surface. When you're done, you want to make sure that when you sight down this surface that the bolts don't stick through. So you can see that the bolt just engaged the nylon threads, and it's flush with the end of the bolts even with the nut there. So I don't need to tighten it too tight because we're going to be installing it on the van, and we wanted these to be able to move slightly when we do that. So don't tighten them down too tight at this point. We'll just repeat the process for this other end. Just drop the bolt in the hole, drop the nut into the recess here, and you can see how it's oriented there, just like that. There, put it on, and then just tighten that down. It does a really good job keeping things aligned. So I got it tight. I could feel the nut, the bolt engaging with the nylon insert, and then it's tightened down. So there's the handle, and it has these plugs here, and I saw in reviews they say that doesn't go in very well, but if you try to push it like this, it won't go in very well. It's meant for this plug to fit straight down in. So you need to push this plug down this direction. So I found if I took that and pulled it up so that I could get that going straight down into the hole. And then I come and I try to push and think about pushing it this way. If I just push it like that, you can see how well it's conformed. So again, on this side, just kind of pull it a little bit, get it, start it straight down in there, and then I'm gonna push it. Think of pushing that straight down. So it looks really nice. And this grab handle, I chose it because it said it was like automotive grade. It has a rubber grip, it's sturdy, so it's rubber, so it won't get extremely hot to the touch. If your van is hot or cold, it won't get extremely cold to the touch. So I think this is a good choice, and it feels good and sturdy. So the next step is we'll be attaching this to the van wall using sheet metal screws in these remaining holes. So there's 5 holes for the sheet metal screws, and these are positioned so that you could still get to them even though the handle's present. And you can see they're basically centered. They might look offset on this side, but they're centered in the face on these flat faces here. So anyway, we're gonna go ahead and move out to the van now. All right, we're out at the van here, and we're gonna talk about how to mount this handle. And the first thing that you wanna be sure of is that you're installing it in the right orientation. So you don't want it like this, for example. It really doesn't match up anyway, but if you were to put this mount with the handle sticking out far, that would not be good. You wouldn't be able to fully open your door because the handle would interfere with that wall back there. It won't make it past it. So you want the handle oriented like this so that it sits closer to the slider instead of out like this. And then you'll be able to tell because the blocks will mate perfectly with the metal, the shape of the metal. So another issue, I have a Winnebago Solus 59PX, and it has some window coverings, sliding window. And so it has a plastic frame that sticks out, and my block is narrow enough that it doesn't interfere. It just barely has a little bit of room between the block and this plastic frame for my sliding window. So this actually gets wider as you come up. So at some point, if you're sliding it up, it'll start pushing the block out a little bit. So there's kind of a straight area. So you have that curve here and a curve at the bottom, and you have a region of straight areas. And what you're gonna wanna do is kind of play around with it a little bit and see what a comfortable height would be, and make sure that it doesn't interfere with anything else. So I can actually use this to close the slider even without it installed by pushing, and just feel how it is, and then look and see, is that going to interfere with anything? Is it going to interfere with any handles I have? Does this interfere with the gasket and things like that? So make sure that you have enough clearance around this mount when the door is completely closed. And you can see that I do. I have some space between the mount and the gasket here on both the top and the bottom. So you're going to want to check for stuff like that. And I'm not sure yet how many different variants this handle will work for. So I have a Ram Promaster, a 2022 Ram Promaster 3500. And I'm kind of inclined just to say that it works for this particular van initially until I find out some more information. I'm trying to figure out a way that I can make like a template that people could print and be able to tell if this would fit in their location before they order it. So I have to give some thought to that. So we're going to want to install this here, and we're going to use sheet metal screws. And because the fit is so precise, we have to be very careful on how we install these screws. They need to be centered very well in these holes, because if they're not centered, it could pull the mount out and you have a little gap and it won't be as strong as intended. So I haven't had a lot of personal experience working with sheet metal screws, but I'm going to give it a whirl. And what I'm going to do first is I'm going to do my best to mark the centers of these holes. Once I get it in position that I like, I'm going to mark the centers of these holes and then use a punch to create a little divot or a little pit in the metal. That'll make it so that my drill bit won't walk around as I'm trying to drill the hole. So I elected to use self-tapping screws, not self-drilling screws, because I thought I might have a little more control over keeping those centered. So we'll go ahead and see how that goes. To mark the holes, if you have a punch, this will be the best case scenario, because we want to mark these holes, and when we drill them, we don't want them to be off center. And if you don't have a little divot or pit in the metal, when you drill, that drill bit can kind of walk around and your holes won't be placed as good as possible. So it turns out I have a pretty good sized punch that has a tapered end that I can insert into the hole. And what I just did is I'm just going to put this in and I'm going to press on it, press straight in on it, while I have this mount held firmly in place. So I'm going to come down and do this one, and I'm hoping that's going to be sufficient to start a drill bit. So I can take this now and align it into that hole, and I'm going to go ahead and get a hammer and tap it to make these holes a little bigger. So what we're going to do is we're going to make use of these little centering plugs to mark the hole location. So rather than using a punch like I was able to do, which was just sized, and I could hold it perpendicular and give it a wrap and get a little pit in the metal, what I provide is these little plugs, and you're going to insert one into the hole. We're only going to install the top screw first. We don't want to try to do all of them at once, because when we hit this or we tap it, it can move. So what we're going to do is we're going to mark one hole, drill the hole, install the screw, which is going to hold the mount fixed, and then we're going to do the rest of them. So I've installed that little plug, and what you're going to do is you're going to find something in your home that would fit down inside that hole. So this nail, for example, fits, and that plug centers the nail perfectly within the hole. Or it could be a drill bit. So most people are going to have some drill bits, and you'll find the largest drill bit that just barely fits in the hole, because we don't want it to pivot too much. So that one's, a little big. I'd rather use this nail. But drill bits come in incremental sizes, and you could find a drill bit that'll fit. So now that I have that in place, I'm going to move it up and align it with that mark that I made with the pencil, and use that nail to mark the hole. So I know it's not exactly realistic because I've already done this, but maybe I'll put it down like this just to show an example. Show that this would be effective. It would be good to have two people work together. One person would hold the mount flush, and the other person would tap on the end of that nail, for example, to mark the hole. So you would just hold it like that and just tap on that nail, and that'll leave a little mark in the metal. And that little mark, once you have that little mark made, you can make it bigger. You'll locate it, and you could insert the end of the nail into that little hole, tap it, make it just a little bigger, and you want it just big enough that you can could use I used a 1/16 inch drill bit. So once that hole or pit is big enough that you could put your drill bit and you're confident that when you start drilling, it won't wander around, then that's good enough. I have really small divots that I was able to do just by pushing in on it. And I'm just gonna try to make them a little more pronounced. And again, don't hammer too hard, you'll dent it. Okay, the size of the drill bit's really important that you're using to install the sheet metal screws. So I looked up what size drill bit should I use to install number 10 sheet metal screws, and they recommended a 1/8 inch bit because you want that bit to be small enough that there's still enough material, sheet metal, for the threads to bite into. So this is a really important part of this. We want to make sure that we drill the holes very straight and the correct size so that the screws have material and actually hold it in place really well. Even though it says to use a 1/8 inch bit, my initial hole, I'm going to use a smaller drill bit, like a pilot hole, and I'm going to hold it very firmly and try to drill it as straight as possible. So those are good size holes now. It should hold the 1/8 inch bit steady, and you don't want it to wallow around and remove too much material. So now I just put in the 1/8 inch bit. All right, so those look actually really good. So I'm gonna just kind of eyeball that. They look great. So I'm gonna go ahead, now that I have a couple in place, I'm gonna secure these. But I'm gonna use these holes to kind of secure it so that I can install this other one. Okay, cut it. I'm just going to install some of these screws to mark the other holes. So it does feel like it has a good bite. It's offering some resistance as I'm trying to screw it in, so that's a good sign. And I bought some number 10 screws that have a black head. So I thought it looked nice. And I'm just going to put two, the top and bottom in, and it's going to hold my handle. Let me make sure it gets in there as straight as possible. We don't want it to be coming in at an angle. Okay. So it's self-tapping, just tap the threads, and now I feel like it's got some threads, and now it's just a matter of turning the screw in and tightening it. And that looks great. I do feel like this is almost a necessity because it has this tapered edge that it fits just perfectly in there, and it makes sure that those holes are perfectly centered in these openings, because if they're off center, it's not going to match up as nicely. So I have two screws, so I'm going to go take advantage of it and give it a try. Go ahead and come up here, Jack. Plug, that centering plug, and then you're going to mark that hole. And I provide a minimum of 3 plugs because that's all you could only use really 3 at a time, the way the installation process works. And you'll put the centering plug in and mark the hole. So those are the next 2 holes. And I want you to remove the mount. So after you do these next 2 holes, you're going to take off the mount, take off this to get out those little marks that you made, unless you're confident that you can see them through here. I just wasn't confident. I wanted to see them very clearly because there could be other little pits and other little things and dents, and I wanted to make sure that I drilled the holes properly. So I would remove that screw, remove this, find those little pits, make them bigger if necessary, drill them with a 1/16 inch bit and then with a 1/8 inch bit to follow. So after you have these top 3 holes done, I want you to install 2 screws for doing the lower ones. So I'll go ahead and put this next screw in for the bottom to simulate where you would be in the process. And then see how this handle isn't quite how it's floating around. So once you have this one in, use 2 to align it, and then press in on that, and then you can use 3 of these this time. Put 3 of these in the holes. So now I got the top part of the mount secure. This floats around a little bit, so you're going to want your partner, after you put your little centering plugs in, you want somebody to hold this flush against the door while you mark the holes with either a nail or a drill bit. So once you have all of those marked, you're going to take this again completely off one last time and then drill the pilot holes with the 16th inch bit is what I use, and then a number or an 1/8 inch bit if you're using a number 10 screw like I did. Same thing, I got some good marks there. Get that drill bit in there, push straight in. Inch bit, and I'm going to drill these now. And I did verify that there wasn't anything in this channel. I took this top panel off and I looked down here and I felt around to see if there's any wiring or anything that come through here, and I couldn't feel anything. So I'm comfortable there isn't anything back here, but it's a good idea not to drill any further than you have to. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and install these 6 screws. This was one of the 2 that I had already done, so it's easy. There's another one. And those are great. I can snug those up, put sufficient force without stripping them. Feel good. And I'll go ahead and come down here and get one of these started now. Just want to hold it perpendicular and push in hard so it cuts the threads. And once you got the threads cut, it'll be much easier. So just kind of lightly till I get the other one started. Just trying to hold it as perpendicular as possible and have to push in hard to make sure it doesn't strip. Getting kind of excited here. Been wanting this for a while. I'm trying to hold that screw perpendicular, kind of influence it a little bit, get it to drive straight. So you can't tell how much I'm tightening it, but I can tell you that it's very clear when it actually is tight. And I feel confident that it's going to hold those just fine. So I just have one more on the front side to install. And I'm happy with this joint here. It looks like it's flush. All right. So I have these 6 front facing screws in. So I'm gonna go ahead and try it out now. Just gonna. Oh yeah, the handle to open it's still down here. But you can use this to move the door and slide it. It's much easier. So for these holes in the back, now that this is holding this in place, I feel like don't have to necessarily mark these holes and drill them. I can just drill them while it's installed. So I'm gonna go ahead and drill this hole. I'm gonna just go directly to a 1/8 inch bit, try to center it and push straight in on it. You don't wanna drill it this way. The hole is actually this way, parallel with the door. So I'm gonna come down here, get the bit centered in the plastic hole. I can feel when it's centered in there, and just drill that. There it is. Do the same thing here. There's just enough clearance. Make sure that you know, watch, I blew those, but you don't want to get metal shavings in your eye. That'd not be good. I've got this one last one to drill. There we go. So now I should be able to drive those last sheet metal screws in there. And I'm gonna blow this out, keep my eyes closed while I do it. Install these last screws. I can use the handle or something to, maybe I'll close the door here. I can really get behind it and push those and help it tap those screws or threads there. You can tell it cut through. And there it is, nice and tight. I had already done this one. I got 2 more to go. Another one installed down here. You can tell when it starting to tap the threads. Easy, and then it'll get hard when it's. There you go, I can tell.